Welcome to Anything Cricket. Let's talk. Today, we're going to be chatting with Adrian Donovan, an experienced sports administrator. We're also going to be chatting with Hartley Reid, and they're going to be hopefully giving us some insight into the recent issue that has come about between the former Barbados cricket captain Kirk Edwards and the Barbados Cricket Association. Bear in mind that the president of the Barbados Cricket Association was issued with an invitation to have a chat with me on that issue, but he declined. So too did Kirk Edwards, the main party involved in the issue. So we will do our best to find out from Adrian Donovan and from Hartley Reid, who was the manager, in fact, at the time of the much talked about incident some 8 years ago. So we're going to find out as much as we can from them that will hopefully bring some clarity to the issue. So when we come back, Adrian Donovan and Hartley Reid. I'll be joined by Adrian Donovan. All the years as Oki. Never even really worked out where that whole nickname Oki came from. But, well, Oki, welcome to Anything Cricket. Let's talk.
Thanks for having me, Philip. Glad to be here.
What's that Oki about?
Well, many years ago, I had a nanny who would take me for some walks on the beach, and I encountered a number of tourists, and they just asked me my name. And for some strange reason, I told them my name was Mr. Oki. And they stuck to me from there until my 65th birthday. Never left me.
Wow. Okay.
One of those things.
Well, as a commentator said recently, in the final of a cricket match, it was written in the stars. So, yes. So anyhow, thanks for joining us on Anything Cricket. Let's talk. We're laughing and we are amusing ourselves, but we're discussing a fairly serious issue, and you're aware of it. This issue of the situation between, let's call it the Kirk Edwards saga, if you want to. This issue between Kirk Edwards and the BCA. We recently learned that the BCA paid out $200,000 to Kirk Edwards for an issue or in relation to an issue that goes back some 8 years. And this, for those who may not be aware, came about because of an issue over playing kit. And as far as I'm aware, and this is something that is publicized. So I'm not telling any secrets out of school here. But as far as I'm aware, Mr. Edwards had actually refused to sign for his playing kit, which was the protocol at the time, and actually left for Barbados to go to Trinidad to play in the Najikora 50 over competition without the playing kit that had been issued, let's say, to the other players for that season. On learning this, the manager, Hartley Reid, called a meeting between himself and the captain at the time, Kevin Stout. Kevin Stout asked if his dad could bring the gear up the next day because he was coming to watch him. That was agreed upon. The gear came, but the manager, Mr. Edwards, still didn't sign for the gear because he had certain concerns about the gear lasting the period of time that it was supposed to last and not wanting to take responsibility because previous experience had taught him that the gear wouldn't last the time. Am I right so far, okay, Adrian? Am I going down the right road so far?
I want to put two things on the table first.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I'm doing this interview in my personal capacity as Adrian Donovan, being experienced sports administrator.
Yeah.
And it is my understanding up to today that although there has been a verbal settlement for Kirk Edwards, so that sum of money you spoke about, and being told that nothing has been signed as yet.
Okay.
So as it is now, it's just on the table.
Okay. The important thing I left out though, which would be an important point for those who may not have are not familiar with this incident, was that as a result of not signing for the kit, he was sent back home uh, prior to the start of the competition, and that's really the issue that would have caused, let's say, the legal discussions that seem on some level, at least on a verbal level, to have led to some sort of a settlement. So that's it in a nutshell. Of course, every story has many different parts, but that's the general gist of it. Kirk Edwards sent home 8 years ago because he refused to sign for the playing kit. And obviously, if you don't have the kit, well, I suppose maybe you don't have the kit, you can't play. And therefore, he was sent home. So, Adrian, I know that you are pretty close to the situation, not in your official capacity in terms of your work, as you pointed out, but you have other connections that, have brought you close to this situation. So basically, help us understand why it has reached this stage. The manager is saying you need to sign for the kit. This is the instruction from the BCA, who I'm representing. The player is saying, no, I'm not going to sign for the kit under those conditions. The manager says, okay, well, the BCA, they've instructed me to send you back home. How does it reach this stage?
Well, this situation has really disheartened me because this is the second episode of the career ending of two of our young and most promising athletes of this time. And I'm talking about Shaquana Quinton and Kirk Edwards, who have suffered similar fates for one reason or another. And both of them careers have come to a crashing end. I'm always of the opinion that whenever there is animosity, a disagreement, there is always a level for compromise. In every argument or disagreement, there is, if even a minute amount of compromise. And in all of these situations, I'm finding that these compromises are not being made. Although I will add that reading in the press, there was some kind of financial compromise between the two parties. But that may not be the end of the story, because my other information tells me we have not heard the end of this scenario. So it is a very unfortunate situation, and I'm really, really hurt to the bone when I see both of them walking the streets of Barbados unemployed. I'm talking about Shaquana and Kirk.
Okay, no, we really were focusing on Kirk, but you mentioned Shaquana, so we got to clear that up, because myself and all those who I've interacted with on the Shaquana matter over the years are of the impression that her career ended because of an injury. So I'm not getting the connection between. Okay, I get that you're suggesting that the matter with Kirk Edwards could be handled differently by administrators. I understand that's where you're coming from. But in terms of Shaquana Quinton, I'm not so sure where you're going with that in terms of it being somebody else's fault. So fill us in there. You obviously know more than I do on that.
Well, this is about 6 years now that Shaquana hasn't been able to play cricket, and this matter now is heading to court because she has been offered through Cricket West Indies a settlement, a financial settlement. And my understanding is it was chicken feed, and she has turned it down. So we're back to square one. So again, the word that I'm dealing with today, Philip, is compromise.
Okay, so
Where
you're
both
talking about
parties,
a settlement because she would have been injured playing for Cricket West Indies, so to speak.
oh yes, and we're talking about loss of earnings,
Right. Yeah.
you know, contracts, and there's a whole lot of legal issues. But
Okay. Okay.
let's go back then to Philip, to the Kirk Evans issue.
Uh-huh.
Let's go back to the issue of the day.
Right.
We don't know if we will ever hear the real facts behind this situation, but what I am reading and hearing, and which nobody has said no up to now, I said up to now, is that Kirk was set before a disciplinary committee because he wore his hat backwards while he was warming up in a football scrimmage before practice and putting his foot on a railing after a game. And straight away, it raised a red flag to me. Because being a football man, you can't play football with a hat with the peak going forward because you gotta head the ball. So that to me don't make sense. And then after the game, you would tear it. You automatically put your foot up on the railing, And to hear, I'm hearing this.
But if he stick to what we know, which is that he was sent home because he didn't sign for the kit. I mean, I'm hoping that you can weigh in on that issue.
But again, we got a lot of stories in the press in the last couple of days. He didn't sign. But the question that I have been unable to get anybody to answer me was that a compromise was made through Mr. Weber Hines and the Players Credit Association that they were willing to sign on Kirk's behalf. And Kirk agreed. So once his union representative, of which I believe he's a member and he pays dues, are willing to make that compromise, why was it not signed? Why was the proposal turned down?
Well, I was just about to ask you that, and then I remember that you said that you have not been able to get an answer from it. So I suppose there's only one person. Who turned it down?
The then manager of the day.
Okay, well, when I have a chat with him, I'll see if we can get some light on that. What other options do you think were open to okay, why didn't he want to sign for the kit? Why exactly would a player refuse to sign? And let's imagine that there are many people, hundreds, thousands of people around the region and elsewhere. This program goes far and wide, who would be a bit confused here. Because obviously all the players in the team would have had to sign for the kit since he was the only one that this issue addressed. So why would he refuse to sign for the kit? A kit that everybody else has signed for? There must be something there that's missing. By the way, I'll take this opportunity to say, to remind our viewers that Kirk was invited to share with us, and so too a representative of the BCA. They thought not to do so at this time, and therefore they're not available to us to get some direct answers on some of these issues. But you were saying,
I don't think any of us can really answer that besides Kirk himself. Why he didn't sign the contract for the clothing. He said in the article the clothing was of a poor quality, and he was only given 2 shirts, and that wasn't enough, and supposed to last him for a year. And he wasn't satisfied. And then he also said something back that he never had the same one before, and this was the first time that he was forced to sign one. And then to read through, as you mentioned earlier on, now to have the man who replaced him bring his gear from Barbados to him and told him that he must wear it, And we're talking about a time now, Philip Ben, this young man was at the peak of his career.
He was 29 years old at the time.
He was in the West Indies team.
Yeah.
And
but this is the thing. This is the thing that would baffle some other people, because obviously everyone doesn't have you in front of them to ask these questions. So I've got to try to wear the cap of many different people. And there are those who would say, well, look, you're 29 years old. You've already been had the opportunity to be West Indies vice captain at some point. You've been the Barbados captain. You were removed from the Barbados captaincy. You've got a lot at stake here. They're even thinking of your name is even on a short list for West Indies captaincy. Does it really make sense to fight this issue when you consider now, if you look all the way forward, 8 years forward, and you look back at the other players who would have been in that squad? I think Craig Braffett would have been playing around that time. I don't recall if he was actually in that squad, but and he's gone on now to be West Indies captain. And there are other players. Kevin Stout himself would have played for Barbados several times since then. The other players in the team, some would have gone on to play for the West Indies, would have had careers, some of them on the international stage, some of them in franchise cricket. Was it worth putting all of that at risk over that issue?
Well, it is up to the individual of the day. I'm having a discussion with some of our national athletes across the board who has refused to take the vaccine.
Okay.
It is a democratic right.
Yeah.
And they have literally put their careers on hold. And in fact, someone has said they're not taking the vaccine, they're not playing for Barbados anymore. Their career is over. So that is their democratic choice.
But yeah, of course, and it's a question. I guess you can use the term where people talk about picking fights. Now, if I'm going to pick a fight over a vaccine, and I'm not in this discussion trying to say the vaccines are good or bad. I'm simply showing the various things, the thought process. Because a vaccine is something that can or you, let's put it this way, some people believe that to take the vaccine will do even more damage to their health.
Yeah.
So you're talking about your health and your life. And there's evidence, as far as I'm aware, that people who have had the vaccine in some other parts of the world may have developed blood clots and some of them may have died. So we're talking about a life or death decision. I don't know that the playing kit's a life or death decision. So I go back then to ask the question on behalf of those who may be wondering, was that a worthwhile fight to pick?
But the only person who could answer that is Kirk. Because by not signing that contract, you see what happened?
Yeah.
He lost his retainer contract, which means he's not guaranteed any money whatsoever. And as of today, Kirk has not been able to find a job. And he believes strongly he has been blackballed. He has not been selected. His name hasn't come across any selection or panel to do anything again. And also he really feels that he has been hurted, you know. But again, Philip, some of us have our principles and standards, and he may feel very strongly for whatever additional reason that we may not know, that he doesn't want to sign it.
Yeah, the two things there, though. I mean, I bet you, throughout, but as I said, trying to look at it from different angles so that people who can't speak to you directly, hopefully I can ask you a question that might satisfy them. And what I'm saying is, yes, you're saying that you may choose to fight a matter, but when you choose to fight a matter, coming along with that is usually the acceptance of the consequences.
That's right. That's right. And we have a few other cases in Barbados where some players have took to the standard or the principle, have been suspended for whatever reason, have been dropped, have been left up, and never retained their position in a particular national team. I've been involved over the years in our players taking national federations to court, national federations having disputes with each other. I have served on arbitration panels where we had to bring in, the parties brought in different QCs, and it was a very expensive undertaking. But at the end of the day, you have to go with the wishes of the individual.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm not disputing that. Just looking to try to maybe get into the young man's head, so to speak. The other thing is, we talk about not being able to gain selection, but if you look at the performances over the years, Kirk would have gone on to play for a couple of the franchises, at least one of the franchise, and some may argue that the numbers didn't really give the West Indies selectors a whole lot to think about.
That is very true. I don't think Kirk could have said that he commanded the play in any far stretch of the imagination. So it was, I agree very rightfully that he was between, boy, that was a very particular situation. He had to know this, he had to know the consequences.
Yeah, there's a Pakistani player whose name I don't remember right now, to be honest with you. And he was dropped after not performing too poorly many years ago. It was over 10 years ago. And he was dropped and didn't get back in the side. But every year in domestic cricket, he dominated. And 10 years later, it was like 10 or 11 years later, he was all back into the side. Virtually, I mean, the only thing he didn't do was go physically and twist the arms of the selector. And got back into the side and immediately performed. So there's those who would suggest, well, yes, we may disagree with how your situation was dealt with, but the ball then was back in your court to remind the selectors that you're just not going to go away. Yeah,
Philip. Boy, and the thing is, we got to remember that a sportsman's career, there's no guarantee how long he or she is going to play for. So you have to earn as much money as you can as soon as possible.
Do you think $200,000 can make up for loss of 8 years, given the amount of international cricket, the amount of franchise cricket, the amount of cricket, the sort of payments that even West Indies players get? Do you think that $200,000, which is the amount we saw in the article, could make up for that?
Of course not. But you will hear arguments on both sides. On his side, he would argue, or his lawyer would argue, he has been denied his right to earn a living, and in the current form that he was in, he was protracted to go ahead and represent West Indies, which means that he would have continued on his retainer contract. Well, the other side now says there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee that Mr. Edwards on his present form is a standout, is a guarantee, is a sure for any West Indies team.
Yeah.
So that lawyer may argue that. So therefore, we're going to give you a sum and take it or leave it.
Okay. So the thing about it is, though, you talked, and this is the reason why I invited you, because of your experience as an administrator. And I know Kirk himself in a recent article made a comment about the people who are performing that role as administrators. And way back 8 years ago, the WIPA also expressed some concern about that. So you're the manager of the team, all right, 8 years ago, or the manager of a football team, and you're faced with this situation. What do you think you would have done, or even moving forward, because Adrian Donovan may manage a team again? So faced with a similar situation, how would you handle that?
Well, I would have taken the advice from his union representatives, if it was in that part, and I would advise my client or my player to sign. But failing that, being sent home is the very, very, very last straw. Because when you are sent home for representing your team, you have become a national embarrassment. You are now the laughing stock of the pundits in the country. You have to face your fellas in the rum shops on the streets. You are deemed a failure, whether you have a case or not. And you have to think with these long.
It's the sort of thing that's hard to come back from, even if you are proven right in the end.
Of course, it's like a fella going to jail. He goes to jail for a number of years. He won the appeal, but people still call him a convict.
He's still,
Can't get a job.
He's still a jailbird.
He's staying. You know, he's staying on him. So I would have, Philip, exhausted. I mean, really exhausted all avenues of a compromise to try and get this problem solved, not to send home him or anybody else.
I know that the public, well, I shouldn't say the public, in a particular forum, one or two people have sort of like put the blame on the manager, Hartley Reid, for sending home the young man. But I read somewhere in just reviewing the incident that the manager indicated that the BCA had instructed him to do this. In the case where the Football Association instructs you to send home a player, how would one get around that?
The association usually goes with the word of the manager. The manager is the spokesman of the association, but the team is on tour, and they are guided by the manager. And if you have a strong manager, a very strong manager, who has a very hard background, sometimes he could influence those directors of any association, and they could go with his call. At the end of the day, it will be, the onus will fall on the National Federation. They have to take the responsibility. It won't be manager. The manager make his report, make a recommendation. By the end of the day, the national body is the one who would send the player home.
Okay. So then Mr. Reid being the target now then is a bit unfortunate.
I didn't hear that.
I said, so Mr. Reid being the target now then is maybe a bit unfortunate?
I can't say unfortunate or not, because other people have other views. Why he did not take the proposal from Wade Hines and the Players Association. That is a burning question that needs to be answered. And up to now, nobody has been able to answer that question, Philip.
Well, I'm going to be having a chat with the manager as well. So I believe that he may very well take that opportunity, hopefully, to answer that question. But meanwhile, I'd like to thank you for taking the opportunity to share your thoughts. You're a very experienced administrator. There's no one who can deny that. You're also a fairly, well, I was going to say effective teacher. But yes, I'll have to say effective teacher. I sort of like pondered over it for a while. I'll tell you why in a minute. Having had the first-hand experience of being taught by you many years ago, I don't even know if you remember that.
Many moons ago.
And given that the topic was football, and I was never particularly good at that, I was doubtful if I should say an effective teacher. But in actual fact, you were teaching me how to teach. And I think that over the years as an educator and a PE teacher and sports instructor, I would have had some fairly useful results coaching football. So I suppose I would have to say that you're a fairly effective teacher in that respect.
But before you go, Philip, I would really like to see, and the advice that all national federations, the administrators have to know that the athlete is the star of the day. The
Mhm.
public pays to come and see the athlete.
Mhm.
They don't come to see the secretary or the president
Mhm.
or the director. They come to see the player. And unfortunately, we have some administrators in this country who believe that they are God gifts to sport.
Not only in this country, when you consider that we've been denied seeing our best players um, in a number of cases over the last few years because of something called a yo-yo test. But that's probably a discussion for another day. I know you are a footballer, you're a sportsman, and you know that you understand the importance of fitness. But I know you also understand that you don't change a culture dealing with people 29 and 30 years old. That
Definitely not.
you don't start preparing for international competition with players at 25 years old. You set those standards in place and those things in place as juniors, and not only in terms of the fitness aspect, what goes along with that. You've got your nutrition, you've got your general health, all those things are part of the package. And maybe it's time that some people stop just pulling little things out. And you'll tell me that, Australia didn't play a guy because, he didn't pass a yo-yo test. You didn't tell me that that guy was in a program from the time he was 14,
Mm,
and
mm,
he's one of a zillion. The others are doing what they're supposed to do. And because
mm.
you've got that broad base, if you lose him, you've got five more who are as good as him. So we've got to stop picking things, pieces out of things, and fooling people that we're doing something significant. I know that I've gone off script, Adrian, but when you're talking to somebody as knowledgeable as yourself, it's not easy to simply stick to the political aspects of the sport.
Yeah. I just wish all the parties involved all the best going forward. And I whenever I'm involved in any kind of teaching a class or course to my students, I always exercise their right to use the element of compromise. Compromise.
Fair enough. Well, thanks again, Adrian. And you had a successful debut on Anything Cricket. Let's talk. Let's hope that we can have you again sometime in the future.
Thanks for having me, Philip, and cheers.
All right.
Keep the good work up.
Thank you. Hartley Reid. Well, welcome to Anything Cricket. Let's talk. In this segment, you're here as a guest, and you're here because you're the man of the hour, the man of the moment. All over social media, all over the newspaper, wherever I turn, it's Hartley Reid. Well, it's not that bad. I'm making it sound worse than it really is. But we can't help but be concerned at the issue that has come up over the last few days, where there's a report of some funds being awarded to Kirk Edwards, who you know quite well, the former Barbados captain and West Indies vice captain, and you would have managed him, for Barbados. And of course, I'm talking about the unfortunate incident where he ended up being sent home. And now we are hearing that the BCA actually are in the process of paying out, are in the process of paying out some funds to compensate him for that. Make sense of it, Forest Manager.
Greetings, Philip. To make sense of it is a bit difficult for the part of the BCA paying up funds for whatever the sum. But what I can tell you is that I can give you my version of the events that happened back in February 2019. 2014. Hey, I'm really shortening it up. And that stemmed from the fact that Barbados went off to Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, they were on the same flight. Accompanies on the flight was the CCC, the Combined Cricket Colleges, Combined Colleges and Campuses. And we went down to play the T20 and also the Regionals Super 50, as it was called. I think it's still called, but it was the Najicor, because Najicor Insurance, they sponsored it for the first 3 years. So Barbados team left, and when we got to Trinidad and Tobago, we were housed at the Hyatt fact, all the teams were at Payout. And the next day we got in, we left on the 29th day of January. When we got down there on the 30th, I received the allowances from the cricket operations person there. And I also took down the training kit. Barbados, we have two such kits. There's a plain kit, where you go on the square, then you're representing Barbados. And then there's a training kit, a horse of long track, bottom, tops, sleeves, sleeveless. So I would have traveled with those because we did not get them early enough to distribute them in Barbados. We only distributed the plain kit. That's it. Here for the really cricket thing. So just call the respective rooms and say to come to my room to collect the kit. And Ken Roy Williams, who was roaming with Kirk Edwards, he came and he collected his money and his kit. And then he asked me if he could carry Kirk's home. I said, it doesn't really bother me because very few people, in fact, I don't even think the players themselves knew that Kirk and I never exchanged words to each other while he was the captain of the Barbados team. Kirk had an issue with me, never really raised the issue, tell me what it was all about. So if he didn't say what it was about, it didn't really bother me. Once he conducted himself as captain, he was actually, in fact, that year, the BCA identified 3 captains. Adrian Smith captained the T20 squad, the Shamar Brooks as his vice captain, and then Kevin Stout. He was appointed captain of the magical ODI, but it's now called ODI, but it's Super 15. So and then Kirk Edwards on the back end, he was the captain of the 4-day team. So there were three captains. So
you're talking about the previous year, because the year that this happened, wasn't Craig Braffett the captain?
No. Craig Braffett was named the captain after.
Oh, after, okay. All right, but I hate to break your flow because you're really going about it in a very methodical way. But you said something about Ken Roy Williams, that he asked you if he could take the kit. I was led to believe that you asked him if he would take the kit. Some may think it doesn't make a difference, but which really was it, as far as you recall?
Oh, no, but as I say, when I called the players to my room, Ken Roy Williams came and he collected his package, and then he got up and he turned and asked me if he could take Kirk's kit.
Okay.
And his money. I said, well, your roommates want you to sign for it. And so that's exactly what he signed for. And so when he told me that Kirk,
so he signed for Kirk's kit and Kirk's money?
Yes, he did.
And took it with him?
And took the kit with him, yeah.
Okay.
Not the cricket gear, not the playing kit. Remember, there are 2 types.
The training kit.
The training kit.
Okay.
Let's
so why didn't he take the playing kit as well?
No, the playing kit. Each player left Barbados with their playing kit. I was supposed because the playing
so they should have had the playing kit already. Okay, right.
The playing kit was distributed before.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So when he informed me that Kirk didn't have his kit, I then the very next thing I did was I called Barbados and I informed them of what was informed, and I was told by cricket operations, yes, they knew that he did. The kit was still at Kensington. He didn't sign for it. So I said, but why no one informed me of this issue? Why would you wait till I get to Trinidad and Tobago to find out that Kirk didn't sign for his kit? So it was still in the possession of the BCA. Anyway, I said, okay. I called Henderson Springer, who was the coach, and Kevin, and I informed him of what was relayed to me. A lot of conversation then ensued, as you can imagine, back and forth to Barbados and all that. Then Kevin called me and said, well, my father come over to stop my father to come over to see me captain Barbados for the first in the competition, magically. And he said that if it is okay, he would bring down the kit. So I then touched base with Barbados again, and once again back and forth. And then Joe Gandhi, the president, he then contacted me and said, okay, I have no objection. He said he had no objection to just stop bringing down the training kit. And not the training kit, the players kit now. But he also set down the form and said that he would sign for them. And if he doesn't sign for them, send him home. So I say, Richard Stout came down. He called
Okay,
me.
let's make that clear, Hartley. You're saying that the president, Yarna, said to you that if he doesn't sign for it, to send him home?
Yes, because remember, I was the manager. They weren't playing for me. I was managing the team. They were representing the BCA. So such as the saying we're going nowadays, it was above my pay grade. I cannot fire anybody. I cannot send him home. So when a situation like that arose, I would then go to my superiors. That's my training. That's how you're trained. Mm. So I went upstairs and Joel said, okay, that is the position, that's the procedure we would take. So I called the meeting. After collecting I went with my liaison officer to the Arcadia Hotel, collected, and you should see me, I was like Santa Claus with a stack of uniforms over my shoulders, like literally like Santa Claus. So there were a lot of clothes. BCA gives you a lot of clothes. And I went back to the hotel, called a meeting, called Henderson Springer, called Kevin Stout along with Kirk, because that is how it is done. You just don't hold meeting one-on-one, right? And I informed him of this latest position and told him that here, your kid is here. And Kirk reached out to take the kid. I said, but Kirk, you got to sign for it. He said, but manager tell you, I don't sign for it.
I don't sign for what?
I said, I don't sign for kit. I don't sign for pure. I said, but Kirk, everybody signed for. I said, from the coach down to the last person signed for kit. You're the only person that hasn't signed. The only person that never signed for kit was me, because I never got kit. Believe it or not, in my time as manager, I never got any kit. Nowadays I see the present manager is outfitted just like the players. I was not that fortunate. So anyhow, I said, but Kirk, if you do not sign, I will have to send you home. He said, well, send you home then. I said, you understand what you're saying, boy? He said, yeah. I said, fair enough. Meeting over, gentlemen. So that evening, in fact, I actually went on my computer, my laptop, and I started composing my report. And around minutes to 8, I got a call from Beverly Hines, who was then president of Rico. He still is. And he told me that they were over at the next door hotel, the Trinity Crown Plaza, I think was the name of it. And they are holding their AGM. Kirk informed him that he was being sent home and that he wanted if FB could have a meeting. I said, no problem. So he came over around 8 o'clock and we had our meeting. In the lobby, it was Michael Hall, Kirk Edwards, and Weaver Hines on one side, and I was on the other side because I couldn't find Hendy. But then, around half hour after the meeting commenced, I saw Hendy walk to the lobby. So I called him on Hendy Springer. I called him, I said, come and join us here, my friend. So we talked, and everybody had their say on the matter as to why Kirk didn't have to, why he didn't want to sign for the close. And I said, but as a policy, is it a policy to be done? So then, they even went so far as we have Hines actually suggested that he could sign on Kirk's behalf. I said, "I'll be able to look Kirk said the same side of you. Well, how me sign on his behalf? If his sign isn't broken, there's nothing wrong. He's not an invalid. Why can't he sign for his own floors?" And more talking. So,
pause again there, Hartley, because there are those who are saying that if you allowed Ken Roy Williams to sign for certain things, I think you said it was the practice kit and the allowances, the finance, the money. You allow Ken Roy to sign for those. Why then couldn't Weevil sign for the other kit?
Well, he's a Barbadian. He had not do Barbados thing. I was dealing with Barbados cricket.
But those who would say that this was his, but they were saying that those who would say, who would argue that this was his representative, his people representative.
No.
His trade unionist.
Not there. The thing is that he was an intermediary, I suppose one could put it. But I suppose if you want to say that he had brought in his trade unionist, but he wasn't his agent. He was a trade unionist. And he was looking after the trade union aspect of it as to what kind of unfair dismissal or unfair practices were being meted out to his member. He wasn't his agent. You must admit that I think I got a little knowledge too with the trade union.
Well, I know you're very well schooled in trade unionism firsthand.
But you see, but in any case, I had an issue with Kirk because a number of things were being said, including the fact that there was defective gear. Barbados has some of the best gear. Up to this day, the BCA produced some of the best gear in regional cricket. Barbados ain't gonna end. Barbados doesn't have any inferior gear. So when I was hearing about some of the reasons why he was given for not signing, including the sparsity of kit that they received. And I'll tell you, when I became manager in 2013, and having meetings with the players, they informed me about they only got 2 shirts and 1 pair of trousers. And I asked them if they were serious because I honestly didn't believe that the BCA only gave out 2 shirts and 1 pair of trousers to players. Now, being on the board itself, I went back to my colleagues and I reported what was said to me, and I said, "This is utter madness." So the uniform was then up to actually either 4 or 5 shirts and 3 pairs of pants and 3 pairs of trousers, because you cannot ask the cricketer to wear 1 shirt a day. Fast bowlers go through a spell a morning, and when he comes off, he wants to go and bathe and come up with a fresh shirt on. Similarly,
so for clarity, you're saying the kit included how many shirts and pants?
5 shirts and 3 pants. Because in fact, many people do not know, but there is a player manual, ethics manual that the BCA has produced that I had something to do with it, and Ishmael as the secretary then, and Randall Kelman as the first vice president. The 3 of us got together. They had 2 or 3 manuals. And we got together and we compiled 1 manual in 2014. Because I said to the board, an employee should know the conditions of his employment. So I got a document prepared, and the BCS still operates. I don't know if they still give it to the players now, but they haven't changed it. And at my time, when I was the manager, each player, in fact, not each player, each member of the squad, from the coach, physio, trainer, right the way down, every player got a copy, so they knew what they were entitled to from what the BCL expected from the players. They also had the order of reporting, who reported to whom. So it's a full document. So it's not to say that the players didn't know what was going on. If they're ready, I can't say it.
Okay, Hartley, quoting from a statement here attributed to Weeper way back in 2014. It says here, and this is the Weeper statement. During the course of our discussions with Mr. Reed, he advised us that the document which the BCA was insisting that Mr. Edwards sign or be sent home had in fact been superseded by an official player handbook produced by the same BCA, which stated that a player would be entitled to 4 sets of match kit for a 1-year period. It is Weeper's view that the document was thus rendered irrelevant, and we also believe that this is the only logical conclusion to come to about it. Mr. Reed unfortunately did not share this view, and insisted that he was following orders from the BCA, and that if the other squad members had signed it, then so should Mr. Edwards. So what I take from that is that the handbook, the terms in the handbook, at least, well, I should say what I take from that. What it seems to be suggesting is that the terms of the handbook made it unnecessary to sign. I explain that to me because
No, but you will have to ask me about how to explain that.
Yeah.
Because I do not know how you can tell me that if it's something is written in the handbook that everybody knows. And in fact, giving them 4 shirts. Okay, let me say it would say 4 shirts and 2 trousers, but I tell you it went to 5 shirts and 3.
yeah.
But how one could supersede the other? But
Well,
you don't supersede.
Yeah, because I'm not saying here where it says that the handbook suggested that no signature was required. The handbook, according to what was quoted here, simply indicated what the players were entitled to. It doesn't outline the protocol to sign or not to sign. So that was a bit fuzzy for me. Yeah, that was a bit.
But no, it can't be fuzzy. The handbook doesn't say in it before you draw this kit that is in this handbook that you must sign for it.
Exactly. That's why it's fuzzy, because I don't see the handbook as I don't see one as superseding the other. I see them as 2 different things. What is written here, according to what is here, the handbook simply says what the player should get. The protocol that you're talking about with the signature, to my mind, is a totally different thing, which would probably more be in a contract than a handbook. But continue.
Yeah, but anyhow, so the thing is that at 10 minutes to 1, because we went right away through only to this side to get sleep. And at 10 minutes to 1, I discovered that we weren't getting anywhere. So I said, gentlemen, enough. I finished with this. Because we ain't getting anywhere. Thanks very much for coming. I gone. And I retreated to my room, finished my report, and sent it to the BCA that night after 1 o'clock.
Okay, so those are the facts as you recall them. Reflecting on it now 8 years later, your own feelings about it. Would you have done things differently? Do you see that it could have turned out another way? What are your feelings as you reflect 8 years later?
Well, yes, because no, having been bitten with it, I would have ensured before I left Barbados that the requirements of the BCA were met, and that included each player signing.
You mean in your term as manager after that year?
Yes,
right,
because
okay.
it was simple. Right now, I could not have accepted listen, it has happened to me, and even now I find it difficult to understand how the operations manager Rollins Howard and his assistant. No, in fact, at the time Rollins was the acting CEO because we had lost the CEO. So he was then acting CEO, and then Roxanne Ford was then acting cricket operations manager. So both of them, but I was working for them, they would have understood. Look, when I became manager, the BCA had created a patch. This logo was a patch with Velcro or pin. You either had Velcro on the shirt, or you would put a pin on it and pin it onto the pocket. And the players put, and I also object. I said, this is right on time. I said, and I drew to that. I said, look, even the Leeward Islands have their crests in their clothing. So the BCA, then I went to the BCA and we got that also done. So when we left and went down to Trinidad and Tobago, we had a new uniform altogether. We're no longer attaching the crest onto the pocket, but the logo of the BCA was made on the left side, on the left pocket of the shirt. So I do not know how Kirk would have played. Because he didn't have any uniform. He didn't have the appropriate uniform. Let's put it this way. He didn't have the appropriate uniform. So I don't know how he would have gotten on the field. But whatever uniform he would have had, except the appropriate uniform.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this matter has come up again. What are the implications you think going beyond the specific parties involved here now, yourself, Kirk Edwards, and the BCA, and whoever else, these specific people that we put?
Philip, not myself. Philip, not me. And this is the thing. This thing has resurfaced. And the one occasion when Gregory Nichols came back as secretary, he called me by telephone and said they were addressing this thing had come up, they were addressing it, and he asked me. I said, but there's a report. Philip, there is a report in the BCA on this matter. If there's one thing I left to do is write a report. And I wrote a report. I love writing reports. I don't shy away.
But you've had enough practice in your career.
I don't. In fact, I smell it, things I read. So the whole issue is that he asked me, and the only problem Gregory Nichols and I had is that I have, and I still have it in the report, that I was instructed by the president, and Gregory wanted me to change it to say, no, not you were the manager, so you had the authority to do it. I said, no. So I was instructed. And if you were to check, if you get a copy of my report, you will see it. So I was never called to any hearing. I was never called to any. I don't know who have sat down with whom to come up with what. I do not, Philip, I don't care, If this hadn't resurfaced last week Friday, it would have bothered me, because the truth be told, my reputation was not at stake in this. I went down a straight line on this matter. And when the impasse came, I did what I was instructed to do. I said, because he could not play, so he would have been getting the Cricket West Indies money every day for being down there and not going under par. So it was clear he went back home.
Well, I can tell my own experience as a manager of a national team, and I remember there was an incident, nothing of a disciplinary nature, so to speak, but a serious issue in terms of an emergency situation back home related to one of the players on the tour. And I asked, in speaking to, was it the president at the time, or was he vice president? I think it was the president at the time. And speaking to him, I asked for direction, and he said to me, well, I'm on the spot, so I can make the decision. But even as manager, recognizing that I was working for the Table Tennis Association, so to speak, I sought to find out what they wanted me to do in that situation, because it was not a normal situation. I mean, it's not, a situation that you would have planned for before leaving. It's not something that's a normal part of the game. So therefore, what are your instructions? How do you want me to handle this? So if I'm then told, handle it as you see fit, then I do that. If I'm told this is what you should do, then I do that as well. But that's only my experience. Other administrators may have had different situations.
But you see, look, if it were something, as you said, that had arisen on the spot, I could understand I having to take a decision and then informing the BCA. But it's something that happened back before we got on the plane. He should not have been allowed to leave Barbados. It was as simple as that, withhold his ticket until he either signed or whatever the BCA was comfortable with. But don't let him leave, don't withhold it from me and then leave it, because then I was going to fall back on my training. Don't let me fool you, I was going to fall back on my training. I am a disciplined person. It can't change. It cannot change.
Okay, Hartley, well, we're out of time now in terms of this segment. So thanks for sharing so bluntly and so in such detail as you recall that unfortunate incident. They say unfortunate because nobody wants these things to happen, but it's life, and things do happen in life, and hopefully, at the end of the day, lessons will be learned that will make the pathway clearer moving forward if situations occur. You're about to say something.
Philip, yes, I know we will come to the end of this segment, but I think it would be remiss of me if I did not tell you that Carlos Buffett is a man and a half of this incident. Because when I had to call a meeting of the squad to tell them that Kirk Edwards was going home, and I related to them what the issue was, the senior test players, they lined up with Kirk. They had their reasons they lined up and said, Kirk, you had the right to do it like. But Carlos Brathwaite asked management, I speak, and I said, certainly. He said, every year, Barbados, a team would represent Barbados and is identified as a team to win. But every year, we do something to destroy ourselves. He said, manage, this has nothing to do with cricket. This is an issue with Kirk Edwards and his decision. We cannot allow this to destroy, to once again stop Barbados from winning. And he said, let us go and play and represent Barbados. And we played undefeated that year under Kevin Stout for the first time. And to this day, I have all the respect in the world for Carlos Buffett because he stood up on a matter of principle on the issue. He didn't take any sides. He just expressed his position on it. So I thank you for giving me the opportunity.
A positive note on which to end, Hartley. Thanks again.
You're welcome, sir.
That's our show. Thanks for watching. Join us again soon for another episode of Anything Cricket. Let's talk.